everyone. Welcome. I want to especially welcome our guest tonight, Representative Norine Hammond.
Great to
Norine,
be with you.
thanks for being here tonight. One reason I'm really pleased to have you, Norine, is you are an inspiration to me. You are a leader in the State Republican House. Tell us a little bit about what it is to be a state representative and kind of some of the focuses that you're working on right now.
Sure. I think the most important thing that we need to keep in mind, whether it's as a state representative, a senator, any office that you hold, I think it's important to remember that it's about the people that you represent on whatever level that is, and you can never lose sight of that. Those folks are the reason you do what you do, I have a tendency to mentor some of our younger members, and when they're first coming in, the best advice I can give them is, if you brought your ego in with you, step back outside and leave it at the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Norine, that when I get to be out and about talking with people, I just had an awesome day today spending time with people all over Warren County and just hearing what their needs are and their concerns are. Just, it really highlights the necessity to focus on serving people.
Right.
I don't, like you said, you can't bring an ego and be effective at serving in government.
No, you sure can't. You sure can't.
What are some of the biggest strengths? I know you're, as a leader in the House, you work with a lot of women legislators, your colleagues. What are some of the strengths, Norine, of women working together in politics?
It's interesting, Esther, because as women on both sides of the aisle, we have this discussion quite often. When things get when they get tense or too complicated, oftentimes you'll see women from either side of the aisle come over and talk to their women colleagues and say, we could do this. We don't have to have all this banter. We don't have to have all this hoopla. We can do this, and we can do it calmly and effectively. And I think women really believe that we have a tendency, we're more nurturing, I think, by nature. And we work very well together on a lot of issues. We don't always agree by any stretch of the imagination, but at least when we disagree respectfully.
Yeah, I agree that as females, we have a tendency to kind of see the possibilities and look more widely at, like, how can we bring people together and bring people in that might have a different perspective or a different solution, and be more inclusive in that regard to create outcomes.
Correct.
And who are some of your allies in the House that you really love working with?
Oh, there is any number of them. And the thing that is really fascinating is, depending upon the person, they each bring something different to the table and to the conversation, and a different specialty or an area that they are really knowledgeable in. My seatmate, Representative Tony McCombie, of course.
A mutual friend.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. But Tony was a mayor, and so she is able to bring that perspective to us as how things affect municipalities. Senator Jill Tracy is a great mentor on so many levels, because not only does Jill have a law degree, but also brings that business perspective from the family business, food business. And Then I will say Representative Mary Flowers, who has served for many years in the House. And Mary is very, very passionate. And I enjoy working with her on a lot of different issues. Certainly comparing challenges to the communities that she represents and the rural aspect of that. Agriculture, she's always willing to talk about agriculture issues and excited about it. And then her passions certainly are in women's and infant mortality. And so she too has been a great mentor, but there's so many on both sides of the aisles and in both chambers, really.
Yeah. And Norine, what are some of your favorite legislative proposals that you've worked on with some of your colleagues that you just talked about?
Sure.
What are some of your favorites that come top of mind?
I have, I've been very passionate on issues relating to seniors, senior care, and particularly in long-term care. And I have found that, that is an area that we all face challenges. It doesn't matter what part of the state you're from. And so that's an area that I have been very passionate about working certainly with my women colleagues, but also a lot of men as well. Just this afternoon, our Medicaid work group, we've been working together now, bipartisan, bicameral group for a number of years. And we had a meeting this afternoon. We're working on hospital transformation. And so there's a lot that comes to the table in that respect. Higher education is another area that a number of representatives and certainly women represent university towns. They all represent some community colleges. And so that's an area that we work together. Equal Pay Act is another item that's been on our agenda for a number of years. And so I think that these are all areas that we can work together, we can find common ground. And one of my favorite months, I think, in Springfield is when we highlight Women's History Month. And we talk about the different achievements of women in the state of Illinois and what they've brought to history. And it's very exciting.
I love that.
It's fun.
What about infrastructure, Norine? Like, what are some of what is the focus and the orientation around infrastructure with the House of Representatives right now?
One of the biggest focuses for me in the district that I represent is certainly broadband. And that is going to be to the forefront here in a couple of weeks when many of the students will be doing virtual learning, online learning. Broadband is a challenge in a number of areas in the rural counties in Illinois. The federal government has put dollars towards that, and the state has as well. But it's getting the work done, and it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So
a lot of infrastructure,
a lot of infrastructure, and so that's a huge challenge. Roads continue to be a challenge that we have to work on, and when I speak with my colleagues about, they may be talking about some project in a more urban area, and I'll bring up the fact that we have challenges with our sewer systems and potable water, and they're just shocked. They're absolutely shocked. And I said, it's an issue for us. It's a real struggle.
One of the areas that's both in your district and in my district is Fulton County, and that's been huge in Fulton County.
Yes.
Infrastructure as a whole. They need, like you said, roads, and just it in our part of the state. We've got to have. We are the cross center of the United States, right? And
right.
We have good infrastructure. we benefit and our whole region is lifted. But if our infrastructure isn't working well, or the roads are in disrepair, or we don't have the 4-lane highways that we need appropriately, we can't benefit from the resources that we have. And I want to ask Norine, because obviously this directly affects the agricultural industry.
Right.
Our infrastructure needs kind of help that the ag industry either prosper or it holds them back. So kind of, Norine, what do you see the benefits of strong infrastructure for the ag industry particularly?
Particularly in the ag industry, it's the number one industry, not only in the state of Illinois, but certainly across the United States. And moving those goods farm to market is critical. And it's not just the roads, but that is a huge part of it. But it's also our rail system, and keeping our rail system up and running and in good order. And then, there's a lot of work that is currently being done at the lock and dams. And that is critically important. While that work is going on, much of that traffic that would normally be on barges will be moved to our rail cars and then off to our highways. And so keeping that infrastructure up and running and safe for those that are transporting the goods. The safety part of it is really, really critical, very critical.
And before, I want to talk about education, because I know you're on the education committee, but before we shift there, you've kind of highlighted throughout what you're saying, Norine, that you work across the aisle.
I do.
And reach a hand across to get things done and accomplish things. So I want to just hear your perspective, like how does that work? How do you successfully work with colleagues that you might disagree with them on some issues, but you find common ground? What is that like in the state house?
Well, certainly as a House Republican, we are in the super minority. If there are issues that are very important to the residents in my district, I need to have a partnership with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. If I'm going to pass any legislation, I'm going to need their help. And oftentimes they will come to me or some of my colleagues and ask for help on their bills as well. And that's the only way that you get things done. And as long as, I say your word is your bond. And once you give your word on something, that's your bond, that's your reputation. That's how people know that they can trust you or not trust you. And you have to be able to nurture that and let people know that you are trustworthy, you won't go back on your word. And I think that's how you build the partnerships and how you're able to work together to pass bills that are good for your district. They may not do anything for some of the other areas of the state, but the colleagues are willing to help because they know that it's important to you, and they respect you for that.
What I hear you saying is that integrity undergirds your success as a legislator.
Absolutely, absolutely. You just can't lose sight of that.
It goes back to what you said at the beginning: is leave your ego outside.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, talking about education, it
Yes.
is on the top of everyone's minds right now.
Yeah.
Parents are wondering, are we going to go back to school? School boards are trying to decide. Teachers are worried about their safety. There's so much concern on everyone's mind as we are headed towards the beginning of the school year. How do you think the state of Illinois is focused on making the right decisions to get students and families back to school, and how are we going to create a comprehensive solution to move forward?
And I think we have to be very careful, Esther, because I don't think this is an area where we as a legislature put a rubber stamp on This is the solution. This is how it should be done.
Mhm.
Um, I put my faith in our superintendents, our teachers, their staff, and the students. And so, what may work for an area in Galesburg may not work for an area in Fulton County or in McDonough County. And so that's where I think it's very important that we listen to the folks that are on the front lines. They know their schools, they know their students, they know their staff. And I think it's important that we offer up different alternatives. And, you know, some some schools may start with some a couple of days in, or they may start with 5 days and find out that that doesn't work. Well, as long as they have alternatives that they can use, I think that it behooves us to lay all of those options on the table and let the local districts decide what's right for them.
Yeah, completely agree. Today I was talking with someone regarding whether their school district was going to get up and running, and they said, they're like, Esther, we're just waiting on guidance and we have no idea what's happening, and
Sure.
everybody's confused. And I think everybody's looking for certainty, and the more localized we can allow school districts to be and respond to their own needs, the better off we're going to be statewide, because everyone's going to be able to solve their problems themselves.
And you know what would work for a traditional student, if you will, is may not work for someone that has special needs or is a special education student. So I think that it's important that we recognize that not all students are alike either,
Right.
and we have to be able to adapt to that. And I'll tell you, the biggest challenge that I see coming is for the families,
Mm-hmm.
for the parents when they are, you know, they've been teachers now for the last semester,
Yeah.
and some would say they did quite well, and others would say that they failed, but they say that honestly, and so a lot of that burden is put on the parents and on the families themselves, and I'm not quite sure how that's all going to fit when you have a two-parent household
Right.
where they're both working, and what do they do to provide for those children
Yeah.
if they are at home?
Right. You may know this about me, Noreen, but because I was the daughter of Christian missionaries growing up, I was homeschooled. I didn't have the opportunity to go to public school because I lived in Mexico. And I've had several friends talk to me like, hey, Esther, I heard you were homeschooled. How did your mom do it? Like, we're considering homeschooling our kids and just solving are we going back to school? Are we not going back to school question by just saying, okay, we're going to homeschool our kids next year. And I've told a couple friends, I'll give you my mom's number. Like, you can get her advice on how to homeschool kids, because she did it with me and all my brothers and sisters, and pretty incredible. But it is a feat to have.
It is a feat, and you know, it's not just, well, we're going to read this book today or we're going to do this. There's a curriculum. I mean,
Right.
Homeschoolers are dedicated individuals that follow some very strict curriculum in order to accomplish that.
Right. Right. So there's so
That's
many considerations, and in talking with school superintendents and teachers and everyone that I get to meet with, I am in awe of how much they're handling during this time.
And one of the issues that has come up for me, and I've brought this to the attention of the administration, there are a number of entities that are willing to partner
Mm-hmm.
with the school districts. Many of them are Christian-based YMCAs or church groups that have a large facility. They have the broadband, the internet access
Mm-hmm.
available. They are willing to have these kids, come there on the days that they're not in school or the times they're not in school, and work with them on their assignments and this and that. Well, apparently, according to DCFS, they cannot do that for over 10 hours a week, according to DCFS regulations, or they have to be licensed by DCFS. My point is, I think we can put safety protocols in place, but we need to start thinking out of the box if we're gonna make this work.
I completely agree, and I think from my perspective as the United States Congress, I think our role is to support and help fund some of the needs. Like, obviously, we have tons of PPE needs, the protective equipment for people, and help fund some of the new concerns that we have with coronavirus, but certainly not limiting people's capacity to have creative ideas, but enabling creative ideas and increasing the safety and implementing new ideas.
Right. Put the tools in place and then get out of their way.
Right. It's the best way for government to be. Get out
of the way. Give them the tools and get out of the way.
Yeah. So, well, Norine, thank you so much for having the conversation and being on with us tonight. I do have one last question. We're looking forward to Veto Session is the next event that you have coming up on your calendar. What are you expecting?
So generally speaking, whether we even have veto session would be our first question. But generally speaking, we deal with legislation that has been vetoed. Well, there hasn't been much of that. But I think that this is a perfect opportunity. If we have to wait until veto session, we have some ethics reform that needs desperately to be done in the state of Illinois. We don't even have to go into the details of why, but we have had a task force that has a report that has been due. It's long overdue. We need to be taking some action, certainly on ethics reform, and if we don't go back before veto session for that, then that's the perfect opportunity to take it up.
Norine, what you're saying, I think, really highlights the importance of the moment in time that we're at, especially around the 2020 election. There's so much happening at the state level. There's so much happening at the federal level that we have an opportunity as Illinoisans, as Americans, to stand up and say, we want our state back. We want our country back, and we're not okay with the direction things have taken. And I think it really highlights the importance of 2020 and the importance of us getting up to have our voices heard and make sure our votes count this election cycle.
Absolutely. You are spot on, Esther. And I think that there is no better time and there's no more critical time than right now.
Yes. Well, thank you, Norine, for all the partnership and the mentorship and the support that you've offered me in this process, and I'm honored to be on a team with you, Norine.
I am just so happy to be invited, and it's always good to be with you. And even if we're not in the same room, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, well, thank you everyone for joining myself and Representative Norine Hammond. Please send us messages if you have any questions. Norine, how can someone reach out to you if they want to ask you further follow-up or anything like that?
Sure. So if it's a legislative question, certainly my legislative email is Rep Hammond, REPHAMMOND @Macomb, MACOMB.com. Or if it's a campaign-related issue, they can email me at Hammond, 4, rep@Macomb.com.
Wonderful. So, well, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Norine.
You bet.